Yes, so this is the first session. I am Şule Serter. I am the Vice President of Active Living Association. Today I have very valuable guests. Today with me, we want to talk about the transformation of bicycle transportation during the pandemic. In this session, the speakers who are with me here right now are from different parts of the world, and there are those who have many knowledge about this issue. We'll be talking about how far the bicycle transportation gone so far, and let me introduce themselves. So Lucy Mahoney is here with us from C40 Cities. She is a walking and cycling expert. Seçil Öznur is here. She is one of the co-founders of the Women's Cycling Initiative, and she is actually joining us from Italy, and she is also a bicycle traveler within the scope of Bicycle Women Initiative. And we want to hear a little bit about it from her, about what's going on. And she is also a host of one podcast, and she had the opportunity to chat with many people from different parts of the world. And Mr. Tanzer is with us. He is currently working as the coordinator of sustainable projects in the Istanbul municipality, and as a person who has a lot of experience and knowledge in the field of bicycle transportation. We will listen to him about some evaluations. Fernanda Rivera is here with us also, and he is joining us at the very early hour from a distant country, Mexico, and we'll be able to get information about what's happening on Mexico. And he's also an expert on road safety and sustainable urban mobility. So I think it'll be great chance for us to hear from him when it comes to road safety. Now, we have a short and limited time. We have 2 questions. So without further ado, I'm going to start right away without wasting too much time.
You, Lucy, introduce yourself and your works in cycling and bicycle policies and everything. And you were also the London bicycle mayor. What are you doing there? Can you just briefly introduce yourself? You have, each one of you have 5 minutes actually. Just cool, okay, be relaxed.
Thanks so much. Yes, so thank you for including me in today's conversation. I'm Dr. Lucy Mahoney, and I'm C40's Senior Manager for Walking and Cycling, and I lead the active travel work at C40. And in my role, I support cities to increase the share of trips taken by healthy, safe, carbon-free mobility options, and I advise cities on how to ensure that walking and cycling policies are adapted for climate breakdown, but are also resilient during extreme weather events. So I use my expertise to help my cities envision a future where walking and cycling are accessible mobility options for all citizens, where city spaces are transformed through people-friendly planning, where citywide levels of active travel are increased. And enhancing walking and cycling initiatives has the potential to really boost mental and physical health, as well as safety and social equity, but also to improve a city's air and noise quality, and they generate no emissions. So it's really important that we are as ambitious as possible and that our city leaders take bold action. So I am closely involved in many cities' cycling policies, and for example, recently working with Jakarta to help them make the case for retaining a brand new strategic cycle lane, which was created during the pandemic, but was threatened with removal due to a small but vocal group who were pushing back, as well as a statement from the head of the police department saying that the cycle lane was causing congestion. So the work that I do, I facilitated conversations actually with Fernanda and her team in Mexico City, because Mexico City has similar socioeconomic and geographical similarities to Jakarta, but they have actually achieved some real successes when it comes to public and political buy-in to cycling measures. So Jakarta, myself and Fernanda's team in Mexico City, we're now setting up a campaign between these two cities, creating content and videos for social media, as well as a public webinar, perhaps a private webinar just for city officials, and a press release on this partnership to raise attention. Another example is through delivering my annual network workshops, where I bring together as many global cities in my network as possible and get them to focus across 2 or 3 days on their biggest common challenges, such as adapting to climate breakdown, or the never-ending lack of data that faces cities, or equity challenges, financing challenges, COVID. We help to articulate solutions and plan actions in response to all of these common challenges. And the workshop creates some really amazing outcomes for cities. Through these deep dive sessions, I've seen Barcelona, for example, expand their bike share system to the outer city neighborhoods, as a result of discussions happening in the workshop, and also Vancouver delivering a new protected bike lane, which will also include 100 newly planted trees, stormwater trenches, sidewalk repairs, and really make sure that this new cycle lane is resilient to the uncertain future climate that we're all facing. So my workshop kind of plants the seeds for action, and then the cities take these ideas and embed them into their policies and programs. And regarding changes in cycling during the pandemic across the globe, we've seen unprecedented levels of road space reallocation, where cities are reclaiming public street space away from private vehicles and working towards delivering people-friendly places. We've seen an explosion of pop-up cycle infrastructure, and this was used as a tool to quickly provide more space for people to walk and cycle, and alleviate congestion on public transport. And cities such as Paris, Berlin, Mexico City, Bogota, London, Madrid, many cities have really created incredible new dedicated cycling infrastructure, and much of this will be transformed into permanent measures. So cycling has kind of been a savior of our cities, and yeah, it's a pleasure to kind of work with all of my cities going forwards.
Çok teşekkürler.
To have you here. And Fernanda, since you are co-workers with Lucy, I will jump to you. Can you please introduce yourself? You are also a road expert, a road safety expert, and in Mexico City, actually. It's a crowded city. And how is your work? What do you do in your field of work? We are wondering, can we just know you a little bit better?
Yeah, sure, and thank you. I'm really happy to be here. It's really early in the morning in Mexico City, but now I'm awake and speaking about what I'm doing. Well, I'm Fernanda Rivera. I'm the General Director of Road Safety and Sustainable Mobility. I work for Mexico City's government in the Ministry of Mobility specifically, and I'm in charge of the mobility policies that are relating to promote cycling as a mode of transport in Mexico City, and also to coordinate the road safety policies to have a safer city in Mexico City. Just a brief introduction, like you know, Mexico City is a really big city, it's a metropolitan area that has 9 million inhabitants that just live in Mexico City, but we have 22 million inhabitants that live in the whole metropolitan area. So it's a big city that has to deal with a lot of mobility patterns every day. No, we have a lot of people that travel from other zones of the city to the central area. And what has been fantastic about Mexico City, I think that in the last 10 years, there has been an increase in the number of cyclists and cycling policies, even though people might think that it's crazy to promote cycling in such a big city, and a city that I know that 30 years ago or 4 years ago was considered one of the most polluted cities in the world, no? And now we can see a city that has improved the air quality, that has improved those mobility policies, and that has see the streets changed. And specifically, I'm in charge of 3 programs. That is the promote of cycling with 3 strategies. The first one is to have more cyclists with our bike share program, that is Ecobici. Our bike share program is one of the largest in Latin America. We have 480 stations and 6,000 bikes that are available for all the people that want to use them, and it's the cheapest mode of transport in Mexico City. Also, I'm in charge of building cycling massive parking facilities. That is this massive parking where you can leave your bike. It has surveillance 24 hours, and it's also free, and it works with Mexico City transport cards. So it's amazing how we can promote intermodality, because Mexico City has a big network of mass transit. We have 12 subway lines, we have 7 BRT lines, cable cars and trolleys, and it's crazy how many people move every day. And that's why we think of bicycles as part of this mass transit system. And last but not least, also cycling infrastructure, because we know that building safe infrastructure for cyclists is one of the most important strategies if we want to have more people riding their bikes every day in your cities. So that's part of the different strategies. And the last strategy that I think is also part is how we promote a cycling culture, because I think that our cities, they thought of bicycles as not part of the mobility system or not even part of your culture. I don't know. I think that it might happen the same, that it was considered only if you have a car, you had a high income and you were valuable, and now we have to bring the bike back, no? And we have an open street program in Mexico City. We close the streets, but we always say that we open streets for people. So every Sunday we have 50 kilometers of Mexico City streets just for cyclists, no? So it's amazing to see how our streets, how you see children and people riding their bikes and being happy on the public space in one in the most important avenues in the city. So it's like closing Champs-Élysées. It's called Avenida Paseo de la Reforma, that it's our main and most beautiful avenue. And also we have bike schools where we teach cyclists, but not only cyclists, we teach drivers, bus drivers and car drivers, because we want to create a new culture in Mexico City. If this webinar was 15 years ago, maybe all these things hadn't happened in Mexico City, but it's amazing to be speaking about how a big city, a metropolitan area, can change the way they see bicycles and how we can transform our cities one public policy at a time. So I'm really happy to be sharing how also all the experience with COVID and the pandemics gave us a big opportunity to promote cycling as a mode of transport. So it's gonna be afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you again for coming. It's very nice. It will be very nice to hear from you, because in Istanbul we have the same population, densely populated city, and we have a lot of mode of transports and everything. And maybe Tanzer will explain it later. Actually, I was going to ask, what did you, to you, Fernanda, how is the pandemic affected, do you think, the bicycle, what it became during the pandemic in public's eyes and from your sides? We have 1 minute for you too, so I will ask it again.
Well, it was impressive in the case of cyclists, because we decided as a government that we needed to promote cycling after the pandemic passed, no? Well, it's still not passing, but we have a new normality, we call it like that in Mexico City. So we started building pop-up bike lanes in one of the most important avenues of the city. It was a 40 kilometers pop-up bike lane that was built, and it had an increase of 250% in the number of cyclists that use this avenue. It is an amazing avenue because it already has a BRT, so it's an exclusive lane for the buses. We used to have 3 lanes for cars, and now we have 2 lanes for cars. and 1 lane for cyclists. We also promote free public bikes. So people that didn't have access, because there was an increase on delivery, guys, no? People that use the platforms to start delivering, and it was also people that lost their employee and now they're using this delivery platform. So it was an amazing change of how we saw the bicycle as an alternative to reduce the number of car trips after the pandemic, and also to reduce the agglomerations in public transit, no? Because we know that's the biggest risk, to have a lot of people, but we didn't want people to be afraid of mass transit. So it was something interesting about what was going on.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to meet you again. Tanzer, seni de birazcık tanıyalım hemen arada.
Now, Tanzer, let's get to know you a little bit. You are a cyclist activist, and now you're working with the Associate of Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality in ISPARK. Let's get to know you a little bit, and also how cycling transformed in the perception or in the eyes of the people. What would you like to say about that? Hello, everyone. Now, with the pandemic, personally, I had a lot of changes in my life, like everyone else, because I used to be a cyclist, an activist living in Izmir, and right in the beginning of the pandemic, in March of 2020, I actually started working in the Metropolitan Municipality of Istanbul, and I changed cities. And in the NGO part, I also did some work, and there was a huge demand, and I was one of the people who worked to meet this demand. So I was working in kind of a public service area now, so it brought some advantages and disadvantages. I can say 50-50 on advantages and disadvantages. With the pandemic, cycling and bicycle changed in the eyes of the people, and also it changed in their perception. It became an advantage and disadvantage for some people, because the public transportation, the capacity has dropped incredibly, and it pushed people a little bit towards private cars, private vehicles, and especially in Istanbul. And with this situation of the pandemic, this was something that was encountered maybe for the first time in the whole globe. So it was something new for all of us. And with the cycling and bicycle industry, we were not prepared, because the use of bicycles increased, but people couldn't get access to bicycles and they couldn't find enough bicycles. So there was this kind of infrastructure, and the number of bicycles were not enough. Even right now, as we are speaking, it is not enough, the number of bicycles. And we also initiated a pop-up bicycle lane project, but we only managed to do it in Baghdad Street, which is a very populated street in the Anatolian side. And also in another intersection very close to the Baghdad Street, we are actually trying a counting system electronically or mechanically, rather than electronically or mechanically. We used AI to actually count the number of cyclists. And when we were testing this project, I checked some of the data, and the data is not disclosed publicly, but what we saw there, the pop-up bicycle lane was used most frequently during 8 a.m. And about, let's say, 6 p.m. So it's probably because people wanted to use cycling as a mode of transportation for their work commute. And when we look at the general population, instead of a cycling culture, actually, I believe that we have to support and promote a commute culture. for example, people are not really very knowledgeable about, they don't know a lot about cycling and using bicycles as a mode of transportation in their regular lives, because they prefer metros and buses usually, and public transportation usually. So these were some of the things that we noticed when we were doing this project. I see that there are 4 women here, and I am the only male participant here. I don't want to take up too much time, and I would like to give the floor to my colleagues here. Yes, that's very, this is almost like a positive discrimination here, and this is really nice to see a lot of women here. And Seçil, let's move on to you then. Can we get to know you a little bit? You are one of the most consistent cyclists and traveler that I know of, and you are the co-founder of the Women Cyclist Association. So can you talk us through it? What are you doing at the moment? And again, you talk to a lot of people during the pandemic. You have friends from a lot of different countries all around the world. What would you like to say about the perception towards cycling and bicycles?
Hello to all of you. I mean, Istanbul is one of my favorite cities, the oldest, the city in which I find the opportunity to actually to use a bicycle. I don't want to make an aid to advertise the city itself, but you can also follow up with our links. I have some friends in Mexico. They are also working in the bicycle line. And I know that South America and Turkey are very much alike. Therefore, our collaboration may be very valuable. And also, we have the Amsterdam city example, but of course, South America is very alike to us. So what about myself? I graduated, I started to work, I am an engineer, I'm driving a lot, I'm traveling a lot by plane. I'm just stuck in a metal box and I'm traveling from places to places, but at a point in the traffic, I was like, okay, I need to stop that. So I get a bicycle. And I was using to use that on the coast near the sea, and I didn't have any experience on that. So first I started on the sea line, and after that I just get a little bit moved on, you know. After that, I started to be employed in the center of the city, and I was like, okay, can I get a bike? Actually, can I go to the work with a bicycle? So at this point, this is where I found myself. So after I start to commute with my bicycle, I try to understand the trends, what are the dangers on the road for cyclists, what we are encountering, and what are the people doing actually in Istanbul, the cyclists. So I started to participate to different organizations, different events. And also, we started to have together in a female group. We started to go with our bicycle. I mean, it was really different for us. And as a result of that, together with COVID, we opened a bicycle store in Istanbul where we gathered a lot of very positive experience. But aside of that, I mean, we started to become a female cyclist activist. We get enrolled with more women. I'm not living currently in Istanbul. In some of my part, I'm in Athens in Greece. This is my new place, my new apartment in Greece, in Athens. So during the COVID, I was in Athens, and I just only traveled to Istanbul to see my friends and to do something related to cycling. But together with Athens, I mean, everybody in Athens is just driving. I'm like 4.5 million of people, they are just driving. They are very car dependent. And because the traffic is very jammed, there is like a single car registration application. The people in Athens found a solution like, okay, let's get another car. This is what they thought of. So, I mean, it was a little bit more comfortable using the cycle compared to Istanbul, but I mean, still they are very car dependent. However, COVID changed the things, the cars just were removed, the people started to use the bicycles, first of all, in their own neighborhoods, because they are not allowed to go to other places. But I mean, at least when they were going to market, they preferred bicycles instead of cars. So they were like, okay, I can do that. As Fernanda and Tanzer and also Lucy, all of you guys in here, you mentioned that. I mean, whenever you are giving the people a choice and options, they can do that. They weren't even aware that they can do that. Before the pandemics, they didn't know that they can do that. But after that, they were like, okay, I can walk for 15 minutes. I can go with a bicycle. Second-hand bicycles, everything was constant. People started to acquire, to buy bicycles, and everybody was just asking to me, okay, I need a bike. From where can I get one? And after that, we were stuck with the quarantine. And after that, the people just rejoined to the normal life, and everything got worse. A portion of the people who were cycling continued to cycle, and there were people who were commuting to the further places, and there was the intensity of the cars. And again, I'm touching this point of safety. So whenever someone is bringing their kids to the school with a bicycle, the safety is very important. This is something that I want to underline also. So in a shell note, this is what it is about. As Fernanda also said, we need to try it. I tried. It was a little bit harder, but as long as you keep trying, you see that you can do that, and it's nice to show people that indeed they have this option. Thank you very much. So we are switching to a second.
And Seçil also mentioned about the road safety for the cyclists, and you're a road safety expert. So what did you, the Mexico City's government, what initiatives did you do during the pandemic about cycling wise, and how Mexico City is a crowded city like Istanbul, and you are a road safety expert. How do you ensure the safety of cyclists on the road? Is it also the car trips also increased after the quarantines, or the cyclists insisted on keeping their bikes on the road? What happened during the pandemic from your side, from Mexico City's government? What did you do to make people cycle more? And what worked and what didn't work, actually? I like to know about that too.
I will share my screen just to show some pictures of what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about Mexico City. But it was something that it was really important for us because there was a change in the travel patterns during the pandemic, no? We saw a reduction in the number of mass transit trips, and also a big reduction in the number of car trips. And that means an increase in speeds. A lower number of cars on the street is a problem for road safety, actually. That's why we decided to build these cycle lanes, because we wanted people to feel safe. What we have seen in these 10 years in Mexico City is that whenever you build a cycle lane, you're going to have more people cycling. That's the only thing you need to know. And you need to build safe cycle lanes. That's why we decided to build these pop-up bike lanes. And this is an amazing picture. This is Insurgentes Avenue. And now you see families with their kids. That is something that is kind of unusual in big cities, no? This image that we usually see of Amsterdam having the whole family. Now we can see it in Latin American cities, and that was impressive. So we have to deal with these two things, to have less cars, to have higher speeds, and also to want to have more cyclists. And we saw an increase in 250% in the number of cyclists. So it was something impressive that the city was changing. We passed from having 2,000 cycling trips. We made some cycling counts on 6 hours a day to have almost 8,000 trips in the same streets just by building the cycle lane. That's why we decided to have it built, and this is going to be the final result, how we made a whole space redistribution, now to have a bus lane, 2 car lanes, and then 1 cycle lane. And we're really happy because this wasn't in our plans. No, this street was not considered in the cycling plans of Mexico City, even though we're building a lot of cycle lanes in the city. And that's why we're really happy that we had this opportunity to rethink the public space, because this is a commercial street. It has high level buildings, and it was kind of impossible to think about having a cycle lane there. And the pandemics let us show the people that this lane was not even affecting the traffic, and that we just only had benefits of having more cyclists. No, this is gonna be how it looks. And now we're in the process of making permanent. So hopefully we're gonna have a new cycle lane in Mexico City. Another thing that we promote was a bicycle school, that we said an online bike school, because we knew that we're gonna have new cyclists on the streets. So we made all these online courses of people showing how to ride their bikes, how they could be safer, what kind of equipment they could use. And it was really successful because there were new cyclists on the streets and it was really easy for them. Also, we had to make a big thing in our bike share system to have all the units clean and sanitized and make people confident that they could use the bike share system and they were not in risk of COVID. And also we kept our massive bike parking facilities open for all the essential workers, no? Because we know that everything closed in Mexico City, but the essential workers that live in the peripheral areas, in the most lower income zones, they use it massive parking facilities. They are free and they can leave their bike and they can save money whenever they use them. And now we have our open street program, that is the one that I was telling you, that is how we rethink our streets. No, it has been in the city for the last 14 years. We have to suspended it during the pandemics because we have like 100,000 cyclists every Sunday. So we have to stop it for several months, and now it's back. But now that it's back, we have even more cyclists on the streets. So it's really impressive how people are willing to get in the public space, how people are willing to use their bikes. And whenever you give the conditions to people feel safe, you're gonna have a different street, and we will rethink how your city is written, no? Because we usually think everything just for cars. And whenever you open streets, whenever you give cycling infrastructure, whenever you give equipment for cyclists, they will use their bikes. And we're really happy about that because we are also having this competition with motorcycles. We are having an increase in the number of motorcycles. So that's why we're making this really comprehensive strategy, because we want more bikes, no? Because we know the benefits of having cyclists, and we know also the risk of having motorcyclists. So that's why we're trying to make these big efforts to have more people riding their bicycles every day in Mexico City. And we see the change. So that was the big opportunity in the pandemics. And something that didn't work, it was our our bike share system, that we lent bikes, and people, instead of having the free bikes, they were just having they paid the subscription and the fees of the bike share. So it was like, we had to stop the effort of making them free. And then we just put more bicycles on the streets and people were using that. So it didn't work that good to make all this effort of these free bikes. So it was interesting for us, actually. We just have to increase that time travel of the bike share. Instead of having 45 minutes, we gave 1 hour free, because the delivery platforms, they needed more time to deliver. So that was something that didn't work that good.
Yeah, it's interesting that it doesn't work. Actually, it's not something that someone can expect when you do it. So if something for free, you expect people to use it. So did you say, or did I understand wrong? You put the pop-up bicycle lanes and it didn't interrupt the car traffic on the road, right?
No, it didn't affect it at all. We also published this analysis of the traffic conditions. What happened with that lane before is that people use it for parking, just like get people, and it was not a car lane itself, no? Even though it used to be a car lane, but now that you have a cycle lane, you just redistribute the space, and instead of people parking their cars, now you're using it for cyclists. So we showed that for the people that could oppose, and they had any trouble. And also the restaurants, they were happy because the delivery platforms, they could be faster with the cycle lane, because at the beginning we were really scared about that they will be against it. And no, we made some surveys and they said like, okay, it's working for me because I use delivery for my restaurant. So it was really good for us and surprising.
Yeah, it's a really good positive change in Mexico City during the pandemic. In Mexico City, we can say Mexico City turned this health crisis into an opportunity for cycling in there. Great. So Lucy, as a part of your job, as a requirement of your job, you are aware of a lot of European cities, and you are also working on cycling and walking. And do you know the work done during this pandemic in the cities? How do you evaluate these initiatives that happened during the pandemic? What are the reactions, and what are the quick reactions and quick wins? And what are the losses actually?
Fantastic question. So it really has been a cycling transformation in many cities globally, but especially in Europe. European cities should be very proud of the amount of work and cycling measures that have been rolled out, especially over the last 18 months. And I think for me, what has been really clear is that people are now finally valuing the role that cycling can play in everyone's everyday lives and mobility. And cycling, alongside walking, can really help us overcome some of our greatest global challenges around public health, climate, and the economy. And I think that individuals, organizations, communities, and political leaders have all witnessed the significant role that cycling played and continues to play in this pandemic. And the speed at which cycling has been prioritised too has been really quite awe-inspiring. London, for example, said that they were delivering work that would normally take 6 years of planning and delivery, and they were delivering it in 6 weeks. What a real success story. And this was all in the early days of the pandemic, in that emergency timeframe. Private e-cargo bike companies in Rotterdam, being the kind of the go-to for zero-emission freight and deliveries. This is exactly what city planners are dreaming of: e-cargo bikes and making that switch to zero-emission vehicles. Paris have gone above and beyond with their School Streets programme, where roads around schools aren't just closed for 45 minutes at drop-off and pick-up, which is the kind of standard practice. Paris are now permanently closing the space around schools and transforming it into playgrounds for communities. Milan and Rome built hundreds of kilometres of new cycling infrastructure, but also offered incentives to key workers, essential workers, through the pandemic, so that they could access free bike share schemes. And of course, a big shout out to Istanbul, establishing a cycling unit within your transportation department, your pop-up cycle lane in Baghdad Avenue, working to achieve a Velo City route in Istanbul, and establishing your bicycle house to support people to learn how to ride, with a particular emphasis on cycle training with women and partnering with NGOs. Amazing, amazing work. In terms of worst practice or potentially lessons that we could all learn, it tends to only really be where political leaders have given in to pushback and removed infrastructure, or stopped school streets after a certain number of months, or removed traffic filters to stop rat running through communities because of the public backlash. You know, Milan and Bogota will forever be known as cities who took quick and decisive action, and cities who are removing infrastructure need to kind of consider, what will your city be remembered for going forwards? So there's still a hell of a lot of work to do, and I'm so impressed with the amazing scale and scope of measures delivered in European cities, but there's still a lot to be done. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course, there's always a lot to be done in every situation. So it's always really like that. So as I understand, the actually bold actions and the to be insisting on the actions, it's really working for the cities. Actually, it's hard to control everything when you are a city. Of course, you are a very populated place to control everything. So I think this should be some insistence about the actions.
All right, I want to get back to you, Seçil. What have you done as a Cycling Women's Initiative in this period? The works of the Women's Cycling Initiative is something, a platform that gathers all kinds of women who ride bicycles and who want to ride bicycles. And since it was founded until today, before the pandemic, lots of women had reservations at work, driving in traffic, or a lot of problems about how to learn how to ride a bike at work. So this solidarity, this togetherness, especially during the pandemic, is a great solution.
During the pandemic, this togetherness you actually brought on this platform became really important. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what kind of needs arose during the pandemic and what happened on your platform? And have you met any other new people, for example, that took on cycling during this period of time? And what kind of way of thinking developed? Well, to put it short, I want to talk about my Cycling Women initiative. We are different women coming together on this common cause. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we came together, and when we were talking to each other, we understood that in Turkey, cycling is a very male-dominated field, and a lot of women had a lot of concerns about male cyclists, for example, going with a high speed, for example. It was an issue for a lot of women cyclists. And we talked about supporting each other, you know, going on a trip together and cycling around the city. And we noticed that there were a lot of women who didn't know how to ride a bicycle. So we wanted to show them and teach them, and kind of did some tandem training. And almost all of the women in our platform, they started off this way. You know, they got together with different women around their cities and their parts of the city, and with small groups forming together to overcome these issues. It's almost like we were talking to each other to solve our other problems along with cycling. And we wanted to travel, we wanted to go to work using our bicycles. But during the pandemic, unfortunately, there were a lot of lockdowns and different rules, and you know, some of the activities were actually restricted. So we had a difficult time. There were different cities, smaller cities, for example, where we could actually get together and go ahead. And we wanted to do some activities together, such as we got together online and offline, and we watched some movies about cycling. And there was a woman called Elif, who was traveling in Southern America, for example. She talked about her experiences. We had a yoga teacher, yoga instructor in our group, for example. We did a yoga activity kind of together. So we had a lot of different activities. It was just not just about cycling, but alongside we always talked about the cycling problems we face. In the beginning, there were a lot of people who wanted to start cycling, but they had a lot of concerns and they were anxious because of some of the safety issues, for example. But there were a lot of good things happening at the same time. When we started this cycling initiative, there were just a couple of groups in Turkey, but right now we have a lot of different women initiatives and groups all around Turkey in different cities, which makes me really happy. And if I may say so, I am really proud of what we have accomplished. We shot a movie called My City and My Bicycle. This was about, inspiring each other with our own stories, because my story can be inspiring to another woman and another woman's story can be inspiring to me. So we wanted to share all of our beautiful experiences. It didn't really change a lot for us during the pandemic. Still, women are trying to find a way for themselves. For example, just to be safe alone walking down the street at night, it is a struggle. So of course the pandemic, because of the physical activities and the restrictions, we couldn't do everything that we wanted, but we are now still trying to find a solution to our general problems. Thank you, that's really nice. And of course physical health was a concern during the pandemic, but also mental health and mental health problems were really talked about and started to become a topic more so during the pandemic. And what you're doing is actually bringing people closer, so it is another valuable contribution, I believe. So hopefully you will keep on growing and we all become a huge family of women cyclists, and I hope that you can get together as soon as possible. And Tanzer, I want to move on to you along with a couple of questions. During the pandemic with the COVID-19, as the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, we know that everyone was kind of caught off guard, and it was a huge health crisis all around the world. And of course, this was, in some areas, turned into an opportunity. And what were some of the opportunities you saw as the municipality, and what did you accomplish, and what you couldn't accomplish because of the pandemic? And there was a question from the audience. They are asking, when will Istanbul become a bicycle-friendly city? Okay, let me try to answer this question. The pandemic is not over, it still continues, and almost for 2 years I want to talk about what we have done for the last 2 years. In the beginning of the pandemic, people were at home, they had to obey the rules of the lockdown, and only the people who were commuting to work could go outside, and they were informed about what they should be doing in terms of public transportation. And kind of a behavioral, let's say, training was kind of given through one of our initiatives through Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. And in some of the billboards and some of the displays in the metros and subways, and we informed people about cycling, about walking, and how they should behave during the pandemic when they are using public transportation. Crucial point, and of course it is all around the world, it is an important issue. However, in Istanbul, we wanted to establish a better cycling culture, and we are still trying to improve ourselves on that, because in the center of cycling culture, when you want to, you need a center, and you need to start from the center and kind of improve from there. And we started an initiative about a bike share program, and in recent weeks, just like the Cyclist Women Initiative, we also have a similar initiative in Istanbul. They are getting training on how to ride a bicycle and how to cycle with safety. And we have given training to 45 women most recently. And ISPARK Bicycle School, which was opened this year, the training we provided for these 45 women kind of was a preparation for this cycling school. So this is not a temporary solution. This is like a school, just like a school, you know, they have their school year and the semesters. So until September, from April to September, we started a cycling school, and we trained 6,000, more than 6,000 people on how to ride a bike. And we have learned a lot of different stories. We have heard a lot of different stories. From the 6,650 people who learned how to bike, 70% of them are women, and 50% of them are above 40, and 65% of them are above 30. So what we encountered is, when we opened up a school for cycling, we expected a lot of children, you know. We acquired a lot of children's bikes, and when the enrollment started, there were a lot of women, there were a lot of adults, you know, over 30 and 40. And this was really a very interesting statistic for us, and it really made us happy, because when we established the dialogue with these people, it really made us content with what we have been doing. And when we looked at the pandemic in general all over the globe, it actually accentuated some of the inequalities in the world, and especially in the cities, in terms of transportation. So transportation, the poorness in transportation, for example, the poverty in transportation, it really became more and more obvious. And now cycling actually goes back to kind of leveling this area for a lot of people. And Istanbul was not really in a good place in that sense before the pandemic, and pandemic actually accentuated these problems. But when we look at the economy and the distribution of the wealth in Turkey, it is not really an easy access transportation method for a lot of people in Turkey. Maybe it is different for Lucy and Fernanda in their respective cities, but unfortunately, a cost of a bike, for example, might be around 5,000 Turkish liras, and this equals to 2 minimum wages. So this is actually a huge burden on the economy, especially when you look at the people working on minimum wage. And of course, the bike share, let's say, capacity was around 1,500, and now it increased to 3,000 bikes. When you look at the scale of Istanbul, this number is still very low, because we are talking about 60 million people living in Istanbul, and 3,000 bikes for bike share is not a sufficient number, of course. It should be increased. But when you look at the Bosphorus and the topography of Istanbul, unfortunately, there are some geographical challenges that we are facing. But we have another bike share system, which is e-bike, and we are trying systems into the city life. So we are trying to actually move these bike share systems inwards into the city and maybe use them in a kind of transportation method, starting from the entrances and exits of metro stations to larger public transportation areas such as Kadıköy, Eminönü, which are really connected to a lot of transportation lanes. So we are trying to promote using bicycles integrated with the public transportation system. Other than that, we are actually taking two things as a basis when we are moving forward, and in accordance with the department that I'm working with, we are trying to work on road safety, of course. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do a lot of things about that, but we are trying to work on it. And like I mentioned, establishing a bicycle and cycling culture and making bicycles accessible for a lot of people. This is our main objective, and we are trying to also expand our lanes and make it more accessible and easy for the people to use. In the United States in 2017, I believe, and in Europe, when we look at the general population, the electric scooters, for example, carried more people in 1 year than bicycles did in 6 or 7 years. So you can see a lot of scooters, electric scooters, in stations and different places around the city. It has been used extensively. So we are trying to make it a little bit easier for e-bikes to be used by establishing a lot of stations, just like scooters where they are close to the public transportation, such as metro. And there were a lot of interesting things that happened during the pandemic. As I was living in Izmir for many years, I am in contact with my friends over there, and I'm trying to get some feedback from them. There's a formation called Bici Destek. Maybe it can translate into bicycle support group. So for people over 65 who couldn't get outside during the lockdowns, it was kind of a support system to deliver them their groceries and some of the deliveries for people over 65. That was another initiative that was started in Izmir. And then there was an earthquake, unfortunately, in Izmir, and this Bici Destek bicycle support initiative, because the vehicles couldn't get into the cities and narrow streets, this initiative actually took action, and they helped the victims of the earthquake. So maybe I can finish with that. Yes, of course, like you said, there are some improvements in the country, especially in the last 10 years. But like you mentioned, we have to work on the cycling culture and the perception. Rather than cycling culture, mobility culture is actually required in Turkey. And even though it's some baby steps, but we can say that we are moving forward. I actually asked you all of the questions. Now we have only 2 minutes left.
Fernanda, it was a great pleasure to talk with you and just hear from you what is been happening in Southern America or in the Europe. And I thought it would be a little bit negative side, but it's all positive, and it's really going well, and it's really nice to meet you, and thank you for coming again to our session. And Seçil, Tanzer, sizlere de çok teşekkür ediyorum geldiğiniz için.
Seçil and Tanzer, thank you very much also. Thank you for your valuable contributions about the cycling cultures and the initiatives all around Istanbul. It is a metropole and metropolitan city, and of course there are some issues in transportation, some disadvantages. Like you mentioned, topographically we have some disadvantages, but it was inspiring to hear from you, your side. And Seçil, thank you very much for attending this session. You are a joy to listen to. I feel like we are traveling all around the world thanks to you, and your contribution is very valuable. Thank you to all of you.
Much more inspiring stories about cycling and transportation with cycling. So have a good day and have a good forum. Actually, today is the beginning day and it will last for all the weekend. So have a nice day to all of you. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.
Görüşmek üzere. Hoşça kalın.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.